Hi guys, in this video we're going to talk about how to get better at Warhammer 40k WARPFORGE. In other words, how to get good at the game. And I think I've got some pretty good tips for people here to really help, like regardless of whether this is your first collectible card game, competitive card game that you've played, or whether you're a veteran, and it'll be quite good to just go over some old lessons. And so I thought I'd just kind of compile a lot of thoughts that I had around kind of like how do you actually improve your game, right? Because right now we're in early access and it doesn't really matter where you are on ladder. It doesn't really, you know, all of these things are going to change and improve. So I think if you're playing the game now, it really is the right time to experiment, to test and to learn the game and get as good as you can. So I've got for you about 7 tips today that I think if you were to follow these 7 tips, your game would exponentially improve. So let's jump in. So the first tip, the first thing is going to sound really simple and kind of obvious, but learn the rules of the game and the core mechanics. Okay, now, you know, it's really easy to jump in having sort of playing like partially knowing the rules, but you know, if you don't understand like the core mechanics, so for example shuriken in Eldar, if you don't know that the shuriken damage happens before the units trade, you're probably going to lose a unit. And one thing about this game, especially in comparison to other CCGs that I've played, is that the margins of error are quite small, and so you will often lose a game, you won't even know where you lost the game. And something like that, something like learning on the job, if you like, that shuriken damage actually takes place before, could be the very reason why you lost the tempo in the game and ultimately went on to lose the match. Okay, so take the time. You know, a good thing to start with is perhaps go into your settings and support, and there's an FAQ, there's loads of articles, loads of good questions the beginners have asked there, so have a read of the FAQ. Take your time and read the cards. Remember, you can go into collection, you can go onto cards, and on the filters you can just unclick the owned only, and then you can see all of the cards. So, oh, I don't own Codex Discipline, I could kind of open that up and have a read of what it does. What does Codex mean? Hover over Codex and read it. So take the time to understand what the mechanics are and how the game itself actually plays. Second tip for me is obviously learn the cards. And I think a really good way to learn the cards is either sitting down like where we are now and actually looking through, take off the owned only option and have a really good look. As soon as you spot a rule or something you're not sure about, spend a bit more time on it. But another good way, and one of the things I did, is I really made use of the practice mode. I think this is a really cool feature in the game. We can practice and we can use essentially cards that we haven't unlocked in our collection yet. So we go on to Ultramarines, for example. If I go to like chapter command, first of all I can play a game with Marneus Calgar. Well, Marneus Calgar is a legendary leader. You're not going to have Marneus Calgar when you first start your Ultramarines collection. So use, I would suggest that you look at the practice mode and play at least one game with every single one of these 6 decks per faction. Yeah, so you've got 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36 different builds that you can play, and that will really help you to learn the cards. Now, the good thing about practice mode as well is that there is no timer, so in the games you can actually really hover and pause on a card, bring it up, read the rules, really take your time to make sure that you're not just playing but actually learning the cards as you go. And you might say to me, yeah, but BJ, I'm only collecting Necrons, I just want to master Necrons, why do I need to read all the Eldar cards? Well, why do you think? You're going to be playing against Eldar, right? To be really good at beating Eldar with your Necrons, you're going to need to understand their cards, their mechanics, their strategies. So by actually playing with the Eldar in the practice decks, that's going to give you at least a pretty good foundation for understanding what those cards do. Okay, so my third tip for how to get better at WARPFORGE is to actually check out guides on warpforge-decks.com. And if you go to that website, you're going to be able to select a leader and filter by that and kind of see decks that community have made. And this is useful for two things. One, to kind of see how do these cards that you just read about go together, what makes a good deck. And the other thing is that when you are looking at building your own decks, I mean, there's always been this kind of like stigma attached to net decking, meaning like you've taken someone else's deck. Guys, there aren't enough cards in the port. Every Ultramarine player's got the same deck or the same cards. Nobody has copyright on the decks. I would suggest that you take a deck that's working well for other people and unashamedly play it, because at this stage it's about learning the cards. You can get into creative deck building once you've understood some of the kind of core mechanics of the gameplay. That will make you a better deck builder. But to start with, just use WARPFORGEDecks.com to just kind of like see what good decks actually look like. And again, go ahead and do that and kind of read the cards and understand the synergies. People often leave guides on there as well, so you can read the descriptions. I leave video guides, and you can actually learn a lot about, you know, how to play the deck, not just what's in the deck. Okay, so my fourth tip is to follow streamers. I'm going to give a quick shout out to my favourite streamer at the minute, which is Soul. His Twitch is Fear No Evil X, but I'll actually put a link to Soul's Twitch in my in this description. I also stream from time to time. But the good thing about following streamers, apart from kind of building those relationships and building friends in the community to talk about the game, you know, you can hang out in their chat. You can kind of ask questions to not just the streamer but the others that are watching. But the other thing is you can really learn a lot about like how to play. So Soul, for example, he's really doing well with Ultramarines right now. He's one of the higher, you know, he's a top 10, top 8 or something Ultramarine player. So by actually just watching his games, you're going to learn a lot. Now, there's a really key thing I'm going to advise here, which is when you watch a stream, don't just watch it passively. You need to watch it actively if you want to actually improve. Now, what do I mean by watch it actively? So, a few ways you can do it. If you're watching a video or a stream on playback, so like if you were watching one of my gameplay videos, for example, or one of Soul's, if you're watching one of his Twitch VODs, what you can do is you can play it and then pause the video, and then you can ask yourself, what would I play next? Okay, it's turn 6, we've got 6 mana, what do I think he's going to play? And then watch what he actually plays, and that way you can check your own logic and your own thinking. You know, is your thinking in line with what the top player's doing? And sometimes you go, oh my god, I've just seen a player that I didn't think of that, I didn't realise, and then you can kind of, that will give you a deeper comprehension of the play. Another way you can kind of like actively watch it is by when the streamer makes a play, ask yourself, why did they do that? You know, why did they make that play? What could be their thinking? Sometimes it'll be quite straightforward and simple, but other times it won't. So you need to really watch the play actively and really think about the cards in their hand, how much mana they've got, what next turn, how much mana they'll have, and what players they might be anticipating. And this will make you really, really good at the game. Okay, so tip number 5, I'm going to skip that one and save that one for last. So tip number 5 is actually going to be play all of the factions, master one. So what I mean by that is kind of similar to what I was talking about earlier when we were talking about the practice decks. I think that it's a really good thing to play as early as you can, to play a little bit in all of the factions, because like you will understand what the faction's trying to do, what the decks are trying to do, so much more if you've had a go at kind of actually piloting the faction and the deck yourself. So it's one thing to read the cards, but to actually play the faction, it will triple the speed at which you learn and understand. So I would say, again, use the practice. This is a really cool feature, guys. Like, a lot of CCGs don't give you this. You get to use cards you don't own, and it enables you to really practice and kind of have a play test with different factions. But master one, so what I mean is, if you are going to pay for example, a premium campaign, I think that's quite good value to at least pay for one, and you know, it supports Everguild. and I think what it does is it means that you will get a good deck. If you have a premium campaign, I've done it with like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the campaigns now, and you do end up with a really good deck by the end of it. So get a campaign and really say to yourself, I'm going to play 100 games. You know, if you're picking Ultramarines, play 100 games of Ultramarines. Don't just kind of like be too eager to jump into as your main deck. Don't be too eager to sort of jump ship, because that will allow you to lose games, and from losing games you're going to learn from your mistakes. Always ask yourself, how did I lose that game? And please, dear God, don't blame RNG and don't blame card draw. Yes, every now and again we all lose a game because we just drew badly. But the reality is, the way that our human brains work is we look for excuses, and it's really easy to blame RNG or luck or the weather or whatever, you know, what you had for breakfast that morning. The reality is, I bet you probably misplayed somewhere. There are constantly options, there are constantly decisions being made all of the time. You know, I'm currently playing the Anvir Keltok control. I'm just learning this deck, and you know, his hero ability, you have to select a unit to put back every turn, and just that alone, like you know, I'll ask myself, if I lose a game, I'll ask myself, well, maybe I put the wrong card back. What would have happened if I hadn't put that card back? And remember, you're doing that almost every turn. So what I'm trying to show there is that there are always decisions that you could have done differently to affect the outcome of the game. Okay, so my 6th tip for how to get better at the game is try to, just like we said about watching gameplay videos and watching streams, try to record your own games if you can and play them back. Now this will be great if Everguild do build a replay function into the game. Hint hint, nudge nudge. Everguild, if you're watching, we'd really appreciate that. Thank you very much. But even if you haven't, you know, everybody can download OBS for free off the internet, and OBS very simply will enable you to capture your own footage and play while you're playing games, and you could just like play 2 or 3 games, and then you can just sit and just watch the games back. And it's really good if you kind of like lost 1 or 2 of those games, because you can really pause and analyze, and often you will be able to see your own mistakes. So by doing that, you'll quickly enhance your game. Right, now my final tip for how to get good at the game, this is quite a big one if you're new to competitive card games. Now I've been playing competitive card games now for about 10 years. I've played all the major online ones over this last decade, and this next sort of principle that I'm going to talk about is something that applies to all of those competitive card games, and it absolutely applies to WARPFORGE as well. So when you as a kind of core principle that sits behind this game, when you're piloting a deck effectively, is you need to understand who is the beatdown. Now, if you're a seasoned card gamer, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here. A chap called Mike Flores wrote a very famous article now in 1999. At the time, he was writing in reference to Magic the Gathering, called Who is the Beatdown? And it's been talked about not just in card games, but in many things, but it really does apply to all of the CCGs. So what do we mean by who is the beatdown? So in any game, one deck in any moment is going to be the beatdown, and that means that the other one is going to be in control. If you are the beatdown deck, that basically means you are the faster deck, or you are the deck that can play units, play your stratagems onto the board and reduce the other guy's health quicker than he, and more effectively than he can do to you. If you're that deck, then you are the beatdown. Now, if you're not the beatdown, and you're always one or the other, if you're not the beatdown, you are the control deck in that moment. Now, the control deck is basically having to react to what the beatdown's doing, what cards they're putting down. They're trying to react, they're trying to clear the minions, and what they're trying to do is control the board and control the game until the game essentially reaches a tipping point, and that's because the control deck will have better later game units, more powerful, like later game, the longer the game goes on. And so they'll reach a tipping point, and then they'll take control of the board and never ever let it go, basically, to win the game. So when Flores wrote this article, he was quite a famous deck builder, and so he really focused on talking about it in terms of the deck lists, if you like, so the deck building itself. So, for example, if I'm playing my, like my what was I looking at? My Orc Control. So if I'm playing my Orc Control deck, I know that this deck is designed to be a control deck anyway. And let's say I'm playing up against like Tempo Eldar or the Ultramarines, like Tigris or something like that. From a deck building perspective, I know that I am the control deck and that he is the beatdown. So I know what my role is, and so what that means is that I should be making decisions at any moment as the control player. So for example, when you watch some of my gameplay videos, and perhaps go and watch my Orc Control 2.0 Top 40 ladder gameplay video, there's about 7 games on there, so there's some really good examples of this. You'll probably see turns where, for example, I drop Makari next to my war boss. Now that means that my war boss can attack his war boss and do 3 melee damage, where my enemy war boss is only doing 2 back. So logically you might think, well, you should always make that trade, right? Because if I keep attacking for 3 and he keeps attacking for 2 and none of us played any minions, I would win that race, right? So it looks like I am like essentially outvaluing him and I am the beatdown. However, what you'll probably see quite often is when I drop that Makari, you'll see me just pass and not attack, and you're probably thinking, why didn't he attack? And the reason I don't attack is because I know that in terms of my deck build, I am the control, I am not the beatdown. He is going to win in a race, and therefore what I'm actually doing is giving away 2 of my health when I'm going to need that health as a resource in order to turn that corner, like we said earlier, as the control player and take over the board. So that's where kind of knowing who is the beatdown in terms of your deck build, and indeed that's what Mike Flores was pointing out in 1999. However, it is slightly more complicated than that, because as well as thinking about who is the beatdown in terms of, like, you know, who is the beatdown in terms of the actual deck list themselves, the reality is that the situation changes through the game. So let's say, for example, in that same situation that I just said with the Orc Control, let's just say that maybe the turn before I'd got the green horde off and he didn't have an AoE clear, and I'd just piled into face and done like 15 damage in one turn. All of a sudden, that situation, I have actually become the beatdown deck, because I am now in a situation where I actually have the resources to be able to race him down and end the game quicker than he is able to do so. And so the beatdown guy has to actually recognize that and turn his strategy into a control strategy. So what might that look like? Well, we all know that in the Marines, the Death from Above, for example, is often used as the finisher. We hold that card. The general gameplay when we're the beatdown is to play those cards to finish the, 2 Death from Above to the enemy warlord face to finish the game. However, in that situation where all of a sudden the control deck's taken over the board and you recognize that they are the beatdown, you are actually more efficient now using your spells to remove and try and win back the control of the board, so that then you reach that state of parity again and you can become the aggro or the beatdown deck again. Okay, so it's actually correct in that situation for the Marine player to start using like Death from Above, for example, to remove maybe my Orc Noble or something like that. Okay, so recognizing, and this is gonna take time, guys, but getting your head around this concept and constantly asking yourself every couple of turns, am I the beatdown or am I the control? Because it does change depending on the situation. It's one of the reasons why my favourite deck that I've played so far in the game is my Orc control deck, because the Orc control deck starts out in probably 90% of the matches. It starts out as like the control deck. But what I love about this deck is that because it has these waves of tempo, it kind of situationally changes all the time. So it's kind of like on a tipping balance. So I go from playing as the control player, and then suddenly I'm the beatdown, and then I'm back to control, and then I'm the beatdown. And so it's why I think that's quite thrilling is because there's a real skill and a real challenge to kind of always identifying correctly which position you're in, and then playing your cards correctly according to that. You know, one of the things that Mike Forrest said is that most of the top level gameplay that he analysed, players lost because they played in that kind of misaligned way. So again, that means that me attacking face just because Makar is giving me a +1 buff, or it means the Ultramarine player failing to use his Death from Above to remove the Orc Knob because he's been greedy and still trying to hold it to kind of attack face, which is a beatdown strategy, and he not realizing he's not the beatdown anymore. Does that make sense? So, you know, you've really got to practice the skill of understanding which of these two positions are you in. So, one, understand the deck builds and the deck lists. Are you the beatdown or control from that perspective? But then once you're in game, recognizing where these subtle shifts happen, recognizing when you are the beatdown and when you are actually the control player. So when we are building our decks, you may have seen, for example, we talk about mid-range deck. Generally speaking, the aggro deck is the faster deck. So the aggro deck is the beatdown deck, and the control deck is the control deck, obviously. And then the mid-range deck sits in the middle, because the mid-range deck basically can play control against the aggro, and it can play more aggro against the control. So it kind of like is a sort of more adaptable mid-range deck. But to start with, just recognize in any given situation, ask yourself, are you the beatdown or are you the control? Okay, so there you have it, guys. I think I've just given you 7 different things. I think if you focus on those, even if you just pick a handful of those things and really work on those over the next few weeks, you're going to see your confidence in your gameplay and your results really turn around. So good luck with that. Let me know in the comments which of these have been like most useful for you, or which one you hadn't thought about and perhaps you're thinking of going and trying. If you enjoy this content, then please pump the like button, and why not subscribe to the channel while you're here, and then hopefully you can stay tuned for the next videos that are coming soon. So guys, thanks for your time, really appreciate all the support, and good luck with improving the game. Go get good. I'll see you next time.